We are changing the way we do things. The Conservative Party is under new leadership, and we have to make sure that we think things through and don't just give announcements without a proper plan to back them up. Ryan Saby from The Sun.
Ms. Badenoch, hi. Labour has made great play of reducing bills by £300. Do you have any aspiration? Do you offer any hope to consumers that you can actually do that?
What we need to do is start from objectives that are not abstract. Net zero by 2050 is an abstract objective. We need to start with how are we making people's lives better? Is this going to keep businesses going? How do we make bills cheaper is one of them. And one of the first reports we're going to be writing is how do we bring costs down? Costs are way too high. When I was business secretary, business after business would come in and say that we're leaving the country because we can't produce here. There is no point having net zero making the energy costs so high that people can't warm their homes and people cannot start businesses. It has to be sustainable. The US electricity prices are about 4 times cheaper than ours. We must fix that. And if we're going to be making bills higher, we need to look at some of the foolish things Labour is doing, like stripping away the winter fuel payment. It doesn't make sense. It's not coherent, and it's because they are not thinking about the impact on everyday people. Ben Wright from the BBC.
Thank you. The aim of the 2050 net zero target is to stave off catastrophic climate change. By abandoning a target set by a Tory Prime Minister, aren't you simply trying to trump Reform UK, which also wants to scrap net zero, and stave off the threat to your party from Nigel Farage?
There was no reform in 2019 when I first spoke about this. There was no reform in 2022. I've been talking about this for a long time. We do need to tackle climate change, but if a plan isn't working, we can't just keep bringing out a broken plan and saying we'll keep going on with it. Let's get a plan that works. If the way to tackle climate change is net zero, let's figure out a way that does it without bankrupting our country and impoverishing our people. That is the message that I am giving here today. Chris Hope, GB News.
Thank you, Kemi Badenoch. There's been some reporting that you may be doubting your commitment to the pension triple lock at the next election. That wasn't mentioned in your list there of things you're looking at. Can you confirm here and now you will maintain the pension triple lock if you win in the next election? And I can ask a quick second one about Ukraine. There is concern about our commitment to Ukraine amongst GB News viewers. Should MPs get a vote before we deploy British troops on the ground?
I think that on Ukraine, that's relatively easy. We should have a consensus across Parliament on this. This is a very significant decision. It's taking us to war. On the first question, I have said repeatedly that the Conservative Party policy is to maintain the triple lock. When we are changing policy, I will stand on a stage like this and I will announce that we're changing policy. Until then, the policy stays the same. Thank you. Aubrey Allegretti from The Times.
Hello. You've reiterated your belief in man-made climate change and suggested that we should improve how we tackle it. Do you think that that is best done on an industrial, a national and international level? Or do you think it's sort of still worth people taking small actions in their own day-to-day lives? And if so, what do you personally do in your household to stay green? Do you, for example, plan to buy an electric car like a Tesla?
So no, I do not plan to buy a Tesla. But you're absolutely right. One of the things that I mentioned in my speech was the Conservative principles, and one of them is personal responsibility. We do believe in being custodians of our natural environment, and everybody has to take personal responsibility and do what we can to make sure that we reduce our impact on the environment. And whether that's with buying a car that is more sustainable, building a home that is passive, we should all do everything we can. The problem comes when the government makes a plan that people cannot handle and forces them to do things that they cannot afford and puts it in law. That's one of the issues. And I do think that this has to come from international consensus. There is no point the UK getting to net zero if everybody else is carrying on as they are. If China is opening a coal-fired power station every 2 weeks, we're not going to get to net zero like that. But we can make sure that whatever we're doing, we have our core objectives in mind. Cleaner, cheaper energy and a better environment. That's what we need to start from. We spend too much time talking about the abstract of net zero rather than the reality of what we're trying to deliver. And I'm trying to shift the conversation so that it is rooted in realism. Thank you. Aggie Sean from LBC. I hope I said that right.
Almost. Aggie Shanbury from LBC. Very close. Can I just be completely clear on targets? So will you come out with a target at some stage? What stage will that be if you do? And just now you talked about personal responsibility. Can you talk about what you do in terms of personal responsibility? Do you recycle? Do you cycle around on a bike? What else do you do?
Right. So I'm not going to stand here and just make a target. If I did so, that would be me repeating the same mistake, just plucking something out of the air. If we do find that all of the subject matter experts who come together decide that a target is necessary, then yes, we will have one. But what I'm not going to do is just have one side of the debate, the people who are theorists, the people who work on one side of the climate change discussion. We need to have everybody in that room. And that includes the people who are running businesses, who often know more than the theorists or the officials in Whitehall who are making these plans. I saw it happen. It also needs to have skeptics in the room. Shutting out skeptics means that your plans will never be robust. And that's how we're going to make sure that we get a plan that actually works. And on my side, I do everything I can to make sure that I reduce my impact on the environment. I don't buy many clothes for my children. They will tell you this. They do a lot of recycling. And it's also cheaper, actually, to be sustainable. So that's why I know I'm doing my best. Harriet Lyne from the Mail.
Thank you. On the other policies in the Policy Renewal programme, will you examine whether to commit to pulling out of the European Convention on Human Rights? And has your thinking on this changed, or are you still on the fence?
So what I said in the leadership campaign still holds, that if we need to leave the ECHR, we will do so, but we're not going to do it without a plan. I remember voting before I became an MP in the 2016 Brexit referendum, only to become an MP the next year and see that we'd made a decision, but a lot of the thinking had not been done and we were making it up on the fly. We cannot do that again. Even leaving the ECHR is not enough to solve the myriad problems that we have. That's why I talked about lawfare in its entirety. There are many things, including some of the agreements that underpin how we've got to net zero. So we will need something that looks across the board. I have been talking about complete policy renewal, not policy tweaks or just things that are for the moment, but that will last for the long-term future. Okay, I think we have come to the end of the questions. So I just want to thank everyone who's given up their Tuesday morning to be here. I know that this will be challenging for some, but I welcome the challenge. We're going to do this together. We can deliver a better inheritance for our children, and the policy work begins now. Thank you.